Here with us today is Dr. Monty Burks. 19 years ago, Monty turned his life around when two women of prayer from his hometown church helped him to get on a path to recovery. Now Monty works for Tennessee's, what a great state, Department of Mental Health and is director of their faith-based recovery initiative. Monty, please come up and tell us a little bit about your work.
Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Do you believe in life after addiction? You better believe it. Now, the host of Life After Addiction.
Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Last week's episode, we talked with One Common. Man, that was a good episode. That song that they did, the special sneak peek song, that was incredible, man.
Such a good group, man. Just such genuine, wholesome guys. If you haven't seen that episode, go back last week, One Common episode. It was incredible. Just getting to know the band, how it started, more about their personal lives is really cool, man. The light of Christ shines brightly in those two dudes.
No doubt, no doubt. Check them out, One Common Music on Instagram. Hey, so another special episode this week.
We're having back-to-back guests,
back,
baby.
Let's
go.
Really excited about the guest today. This is a gentleman who has, I guess we've known each other close to a decade, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, but he has been very helpful with S2L, with the journey that we've been on. He's been an advocate, an ambassador for us. A lot of people in Middle Tennessee, probably in the state of Tennessee, definitely in the state of Tennessee, know this guy. He's been an advocate for the church. He's been an advocate for faith-based recovery, for people telling their story. He's a guy that wants you to succeed, that wants to put you in places, introduce people to connect dots. I'm excited to have Dr. Monty Burks on the podcast today. Welcome, sir.
Hey, welcome, man. Welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here, honored to be able to spend some time with you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So I want to get into your new role at the governor's office that you've been in for a year. We could talk a little bit about the 11-plus years that you served for the Tennessee Department of Mental Health. But, man, I think you do that all the time. I want to get into it because it's important, but tell me your story, man. I want to hear about what, because I know Dr. Monty Burks, the guy that you see on the stage with President Trump, we'll talk about that too, but that's not the whole story, is it?
No, that's not the whole story, man. You know, thank you for giving me the space to do that. You know, I'm a huge advocate for people telling their story. And sometimes my story is not always comfortable for other people, but it's still my story.
Yeah.
The things that I've been through to get to where I'm at, and God's giving me the gifts to move through and the understanding of how to use them. I grew up in a very unique religious household. My mother is Pentecostal piano player, man, and you know, she was always with me, even in my darkest days. She didn't condone my behavior, but she loved me back to life.
Yeah.
And I had made some choices when I was young, and I'm really thankful that you give me the space to talk about before all the jobs and the things that I've done. Something prepped me for that moment. And what prepped me for that moment was lived experience. I was introduced to the criminal justice system because of the choices that I made early in my 20s.
He got locked up.
Yes. In layman's terms, that means that I got locked up.
Yeah.
So for anybody that needs to hear that another way,
Yeah.
introduction to the criminal justice system is walking into those front doors, and that's actually when the reentry process starts.
Yeah.
Is the first day you walk in, in those doors. I had a support system. My support system was churches that I had been working with in Rutherford County here in Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
I spent some years running the streets, learning how the streets were. My father passed away, and when my father passed away, it left a void in my life. So that caused me to gravitate toward other things than a healthy man's influence on my life. So I found other influences.
Yeah.
And the other influences that I reached out to and reached for was misery. Misery loves company.
Yeah.
People that are not really focused on their future, they're focused on today. They're going to lead you where they're going, which is usually nowhere.
Yeah.
And
how old were you when your dad?
I was 20 at the time. When my father passed away, I was 21. So I'd had a really close relationship with my dad. Oof. He and I were, super tight.
Yeah.
And he hit a downward spiral quick. So me being his only son, I had to navigate walking into a manhood and trying to be a man while I was losing the man that had raised me.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
And
Golly.
it caused me to open the door to other influence because I was searching for something.
Yeah, it's at 21.
Yeah, 21 years old, man. And I grew up in the church, and I'll say this as a church kid that grew up in the pews of sanctuaries, as many of us have. As I got older, the first thing I did was ran away. I pulled myself away from the church because I grew up in a very structured environment. I grew up Pentecostal. We went to church at least 7 to 11 times a week. And, I joke about it now, but in retrospect, there was a lot of value. There was a value there. There was something there because I had people that were sowing into me at all those meetings, whether I knew it or not. People were throwing seeds out, planting seeds, throwing them everywhere they could to see if they would land on soil that would take them. Even if they threw them on the rocks, they still threw them.
That's right.
And some of those things, actually, that's my reentry journey. How it took its greatest life was because of the seeds that the people planted on me actually came to fruition when I hit rock bottom in a jail cell. And that, man, I had started to get my life straightened out and had started to reach out to people, and then ran into some ladies at a local church that invited me to a recovery meeting. And I'm very open about my story. These ladies invited me to a recovery meeting, and we didn't call it recovery at the time. We called, everything was rehabilitation. So that was the term associated with addiction, was rehabilitation. So what happened was sometimes people were scared of the word. Like, I don't want to go to rehab. You're going to rehab? I don't want to go to rehab. Yeah. People were like standoffish with the word. These ladies invited me to a meeting. They called it a meeting. They said, you want to go to a meeting with some people that we think you'll like. And I went to the meeting, and the meeting was the first step. It was a local church right off the square in Murfreesboro.
Yep.
And the meeting was the first time as a man that I seen other men be vulnerable about their past. It was a 12-step circle, respectfully to the fellowships.
Sure.
I went into that circle, and the first thing I did is I said, I'm not one of them. I rejected the meeting at first because I grew up Southern rural. In my mind, we don't show emotions, we repress them, and we can fix everything. All you gotta do is give me a screwdriver and a hammer, and I'll figure out how to get it done.
Duct tape too.
Yes, we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, and I hadn't got in front of this thing that had control of me.
Yeah.
Not only was there a substance use addiction, there was also a lifestyle addiction. Everything associated with the drug use, running around with the people and the money and the things, all of the things of the world that didn't lead to freedom. They led me to bondage. But when I went into that room, it was a time for me. It's like the scales fell from my eyes, man. It's just like right there. I was like, oh my gosh, God loves me. God has a plan for me. Now, I had managed to get myself in trouble, so I still had some, I had some things I had to answer to.
Consequences, yeah.
Consequences for my
sow
behavior.
Seeds, sometimes you have to reap the reward.
Yeah, I had to reap, but the reaping that I did ended up being a reward.
Yeah.
Because I technically needed the time out more than I imagined, because even though I thought that I was on the perfect path out because I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, I really wasn't ready. I still had those internal relapse, the mental relapse, all the things kept trying to pull me back. But when I went through the court system, they actually gave me a chance. They said, hey, listen, we're going to send you somewhere where you can go to a program while you're there, or you can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I chose, I said, I'll go through a program.
I
I had already been exposed to what recovery looked like. And again, we didn't call it that then, but I had been exposed to other people being vulnerable and other people who had also wandered in the wilderness the same way I did, looking for their purpose, trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? And man, I spent some significant time there, and the things that I learned there were the things that I should have picked up in another part of my manhood that I didn't.
Wow.
I learned to pay attention to me. I got into scripture. I learned to not feed myself nonsense as soon as I wake up in the morning. Even before we had social media, I still did not wake up in the morning and feed my soul. The first thing I did was go out and do whatever I did last night or the night before, because I had surrounded myself by other people And in truth and actuality, Pastor Adam, I needed to lead better because people at that time everybody was trying to follow each other because nobody knew where they were going. And, I'm thankful that God lets me see that. I'm thankful that my relationship with God has opened my eyes to the fact that everything that we do, somebody sees us.
Yeah.
It's a leadership moment. So that's what
It's
got
interesting,
me.
man. I want to tell you that. That's something that I think you've heard us talk about before. A part of the thing about them stepping up and leading well. A part of the vision that we believe, and maybe even the calling that we believe the Lord has given, not just to us but to our community, is from the rooms of recovery will come the revival of a nation. And I really believe that, man. In the aspect of, if you look at the heroes of our faith, they're us-like people. The Bible clearly shows that there is a lot of flaws in the heroes that he chose to use, right? And so I believe people that have come through this, that God's calling, and you see the pastors of some big churches now. We were just talking about Pastor Travis Toon, who you see every Wednesday on this channel. You didn't even know he was with us. You were stopping talking to a local law enforcement. He was talking about Pastor Toon. And yeah, he came through his church here in Woodbury, here in the Middle Tennessee area. We didn't ordain him. His church recognized the difference in his life and the leadership that he had, and they ordained him as a teaching pastor. He's one of the best communicators, man, when it comes to preaching the word. But just so we believe that God's calling us because, man, we don't give a rip anymore what the world thinks. We want to follow and serve him. And we believe, like you're saying, that you have that feeling that, man, everyone's following each other. You needed to lead better. And I believe that there is a calling like that. I think some movement's going to begin, and has been, and is going to continue to happen of just leaders stepping up and leading, and a revival of a nation come. So I want to get back to you. The title of this podcast is called Life After Addiction. We want to share. We do a lot of things. We want people to have hope that there is life after addiction. That it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to own you, and you can have hope and be joyful in that. We do a lot of things. We share resources for family members. We do silly things like react to certain songs. But really, it's to have hope. And so, you heard his story so far, and it's one maybe familiar. He's very speaks very eloquently, and I got to tell this story about you. I think there's some that don't know you. I think they see you in your suits and your bow ties, and they hear you talking, and they forget that you're a cage fighter, right? That you came up. So I always, whenever we do speaking events, I always say, when I introduce you, talk about this man, he'll lead you to the Lord, he'll give you encouragement, but he'll also put you in a rear naked choke if you're not careful. And so I got to hear it real quick. Just share with it, because it's the tell-all of the people before we dive into what God's doing in your life now and how he's using you. Cage fighting. I mean, you've got to be a special type of crazy to get into a cage and fight. And we have that in common. We talk about UFC and MMA at times. And we've had Jared Gordon, the Jared Flash Gordon from UFC.
Yes.
He's been on the show twice now. And so we're big fighters. But, man, how in the world? I mean, I've seen video. Like, I know a lot of people probably, if they follow you, they know that you're in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is crazy enough, but they didn't. I don't know. Many people know that you actually were in the cage fighting, mixed martial arts, doing it for real.
So it goes into the journey that I've taken, man. So I'm going to use this, and this is me plugging you guys. The concept of springing to life is so much more complex than one thing. So I was reintroduced to my faith. Yeah. I was reintroduced to my family, but I still had a void. There was still a missing component of, what do I do with this energy and this time? And in the recovery world, we say new playground and new playmates. So I had new playgrounds and playmates, or better adjusted playgrounds and playmates, in all the other spaces in my world, but I needed somewhere to get my energy out, man. And so I walked into an MMA gym. And, I grew up in my uncle, his wife, lots of my family members were involved in a kickboxing space. Okay. And they had started to get into the MMA world. And, man, I wanted to get in there and get my energy out. So I walked in and saw all these people punching each other, man, takedowns, double leg, single leg. It was a wrestling class. And then there was a jiu-jitsu class going on beside it.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, wow. I grew up in a striking world, so I walked in, signed up for the gym immediately, got humbled immediately.
Yeah.
I ate my humble pie immediately because no matter how good we think we are, we're not always the top of the food chain, sometimes with the food.
Yeah.
But what that actually did for me was help me stay grounded in my spiritual journey, because I had managed to be involved with one of the churches. I had seen some of the guys that were at my church that were actually training at the gym.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I call it the deadly deacons. Man, when I tell you something, man, when a man is ordained as a deacon, you know there's a lot of stuff came with him, man. Gosh, there's a lot of stuff that came with him. But we would go in and we would strike, or we would do jiu-jitsu, we'd grapple, we'd train, and we would all still have that commonality between us as people of faith. And you could see that and you could feel that from people. And listen, I know that everybody that goes in those spaces, they're not people of faith.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But I am.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to express my faith in any way that I can for anybody that's there. I'm not gonna change me. That's me. But it gave me an opportunity to do something with that extra time and energy that I had. And I actually think that one of the major contributing factors to my recovery journey being I'm very careful with the word successful because I'm not measuring it to anybody else's.
Yeah.
I respect everybody's journey.
Sure.
What's something to me is not something to somebody else. Listen, anybody you can hear me, whatever journey you're walking, however you find success is how you find it. I appreciate you and I applaud you for it. For me, how I found my freedom was being connected at every facet I could to people that were positive. Even though the people might have been trying to rear naked choke me at the time, they were still my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So, man, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, I was just going to kind of touch on something you talked about earlier. So you mentioned your own reentry into the free world from incarceration, and I know it's something you're very passionate about.
Absolutely.
So maybe expound more upon reentry of men and women who are coming out of incarceration and how that coincides with the church, how it coincides with the community, how it coincides with family, and just unpack all that.
Man, oh my gosh, what a wonderful question. So I think that the church is the bridge to the community. I think that the church, understanding that when a person goes into the criminal justice system, 95.6% of those people are coming home. Our churches should be a landing spot, an onboarding spot.
Amen.
That's connected to community, that can help people that have been through the system tell their story. There are so many people, you two know this, I know from just the work that you do, that there are so many good people that made bad choices.
Yep.
There are also some bad people that made bad choices, but during the criminal justice process, people can reimagine themselves, catch a moral compass, change their ways, be connected to folks, get out and have no community. People can change and have nothing. Our churches have been here for hundreds of years. There are many hospitals that are just about on every corner of this state. You go to rural, you go to city, whatever, man, you got a church. So when churches are involved in telling the story of people that have been formerly incarcerated, people that are in recovery, people that are living with mental illness, people that can go to work, people that can provide for their families, we should not ostracize people who try.
Yeah.
Amen.
If they get out and try, I think it is our biblical mandate to be the father of the fatherless, to be the mother of the motherless, and to look out for the orphan that has no one. And when we say orphan, we're not just talking about children, we're talking about adults that have been disconnected, and sometimes for good reason, from the way they were raised. I think that the church can be everything in the community changer for people that have been incarcerated. Jobs, faith-based communities, churches, they're business owners, they're connected to every business. Who eats out on Sundays? So if those folks are advocating for people that have been through the stuff, the dirty stuff in life, I think those restaurants and those businesses that hire people may think twice about giving somebody an opportunity. And that's not a knock on anybody. That's like, hey, let's love these people back to life. I stole loving people back to life. I stole that saying from somebody. But I like to think of the church as an opportunity always for a person to find the resources they need to get back acclimated.
Yeah. Man, I'm just sitting with you. We've done many events over the years, but it's different than just sitting with you. And I'm just reminiscing on old time. I just remembered this is not Dr. Burks' first time on Life After Addiction. Your first time on our podcast, I don't know, 7 years ago, and
7
it was in a
years ago.
shed by my house in Smyrna.
Yes.
And there was no video; it was all audio. And Bruce and man, that was awesome. And so it makes me think. Obviously, we knew you when you were with the Department of Mental Health, and now you've served just at a year with the governor's office, the Faith-Based and Community Initiative. You're the deputy director of that. And I can hear your passion. It was a brilliant decision for them to bring you on board, obviously, just with your heart and your story and the connections that you've made. But with the reentry, I know the governor's initiative of that was also with children, children without parents, adoption, foster care, and things like that. That's kind of your new realm, and then I want to dive into the 11 years you spent with them. But tell us about what's going on with mentors. How do we people coming back into with the initiatives of reentry? You need mentors in that. Are those people becoming mentors? What's your vision? What's the governor's vision with that?
So we have two prongs that we're working on in the governor's office. One is the Volunteer Mentor Initiative.
Okay.
And the Volunteer Mentor Initiative, we're looking for people with lived experience to go and mentor people while they're still incarcerated.
Oh, wow.
So when I say lived experience, man, the dirtiest stuff you've been through, that's the stuff that other people need to hear that you survived from. So we're looking for people that are willing to go and share their testimony with somebody, man. Yeah. Spend an hour a month with a person that needs to be introduced to someone that survived all the things.
And is that jails or prisons or both?
Prisons, right now, primarily prisons.
Okay.
We're going to also work in the county. At some point, we'll be working with the county jails.
Is there a program that you're offering for these volunteers? Obviously, I've gone into the local jails and stuff, and there's pretty serious checks and stuff. And obviously, if there's some of the people that, probably the main people that you want, are going to have a hard time with those checks and balances. I'm imagining that the governor's office, your initiative that you're pushing, it has a new way of getting felons, people with a history, people with a past into these places to where before maybe they weren't. Is that?
Absolutely, man. We're working on an innovative approach to bringing peers to be mentors into the jail space. So when you use the word peer, you know that you're looking at people that have accumulated a snowball going downhill's past.
Yeah.
With that being said, people that have a marked history of productive work in the peer space, let's work on it. We're working hand in hand with the Department of Corrections and a couple of other different state departments to figure out how to get them in front of other people. We know this as people of faith, that we've seen the archetypes of people that we follow. We've seen different versions of our Moses and how he led people out of captivity. But we needed somebody like Moses, not somebody like Jeff. We needed Moses.
Yeah.
Because Moses grew up on both sides of the track. Moses did some dirt. Moses got in trouble. Moses got lost in the wilderness. Moses did all the things. Moses talked to a burning bush. Moses did some stuff.
Can I hit you with something about
Yes,
that?
sir.
And I mean, fact check this, but I have done some research and studied this. So Moses, Old Testament, kills the Egyptians, goes on the run, right? The exact path that Moses went on the run is the exact path that he led the millions later out of Egypt. Isn't that wild? So literally, his history, his past, his running, his shame prepared him for the journey ahead that God had for him.
Isn't that Peer 101?
Yeah.
That is Peer Work 101 that is, so it's laid out for us. I encourage any church that can hear me, any reentry program that can hear me, people that are part of your program, man, I would love to work with you to identify some of your graduates and to take them into the prisons and 2 by 2 go in and sit down with people. I've told my story. I can identify with some people. Man, I ain't from Cannon County.
Yeah.
I ain't from Van Buren. I need somebody from Van Buren. Yeah. I need somebody from Rocky Top, Tennessee to go into there and say, hey, I'm from the same area. I'm from the projects. I'm from the trailer park. I lived under a bridge. I was homeless. Tell the story of how you survived it and show people an example of what it looks like on the other side.
Well, that's full circle. That's stepping up and leading correctly. That's not wanting someone else to do it. That's saying, I'm taking ownership. I've been here. I feel that calling. I'm going to respond to it. That's the whole thing, man. We're wanting our alumni. They're starting recovery meetings all over the country. Got a call or text yesterday, starting a recovery meeting. We got guys in East Tennessee that are becoming leaders of a recovery organization with Sarah Keel. Actually, her clinical director came through our program. Her clinical director came through our program. Isn't that nuts? So he's a licensed family and therapist now, master's level and all of that. And so that's the vision. You go out and equip. Don't expect others to do it. If you have a story, be that guy. Be the leader that you wanted in your life. Be the leader that your community needs. So yeah, I'm with that, man. That's a part of revival.
You said it. I've worked with Sarah. Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah's lived experience, the things that she's been through, can attract so many people to her journey and her story. Mm-hmm. The cool thing about the way we work together is when somebody says something to me that I know that is up Sarah's alley, I'm going to call Sarah.
Yeah.
That's me being smart enough to know that I don't have answers, but I know people that can help you find your own answers.
Yeah.
I think that our being equipped, and it goes back to my journey through the criminal justice system, is when I hit rock bottom, man, I'm going to tell you something. When I hit rock bottom, I lost some people in my family close to me.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing voices of old saints singing church songs when I was in a jail cell. And I called my mom. I said, okay, I'm ready. I was like, and it took that for me. Some people say you don't see the light until you feel the heat. Man, I was fully in the furnace at that point. But knowing that I had people waiting on me, that had been waiting on me, people like you guys that were on the other side, and said, okay, we're not here to excuse what you did. We're here to lead you with what you've done and using that in a productive way to help other people not have to go through this. Man, that's like the recipe, the perfect chaotic storm.
Yeah.
You know that recovery is chaotic.
Sure.
Everybody's recovery journey is their own chaotic storm that ends up being the calm at the other side of the lake.
Yeah, if you ever hear a testimony about addiction, you normally hear the word chaos. No
Yep, it's there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people from the outside world that don't understand that they're also in recovery too. The whole world needs to go through a meeting at some point. But other people that don't realize that that it doesn't have to be a scripted, perfect path. When a person's path is chaotic, man, they got a story.
Yeah. You know what, man? I want to ask you something. I think for the people that are on our subscribers and that kind of thing that know you, they know you and they know what you're about. But, I know something about you that I'd like you to talk about that maybe they don't know. And I want you to get, gloves off. This is about your faith. How important, and this is on the topic, I'm sorry to take us down a rabbit trail. It's on the topic of what you're talking about. How important to you, and explain, how important and real do you think that your mom's prayers for you were, and how much of an effect did that have? Because Chitty always talks about the importance of my mama's prayer, man. We talk about this all the time. I know your mama, I know she was praying for you. Man, you said Pentecost, I just see her praying for you. I've seen you talk about her publicly, privately. How important were her prayers over your life, you think, to the people? They've heard you talk, but this is more on a personal level.
Man, the effective prayers of the righteous person availeth much.
Powerful and effective.
And when I hit those spots, when she was there with me through court case, through recovery program, through my graduation at a recovery program, she brought a Bible everywhere she went.
Come on.
Every time when I went to school, when I went back to college, when I graduated, she brought her Bible to my graduation. Every part of that journey, every time I talked to her, she either started with the word, but she always ended with the word. She always instilled in me that we've been praying for you and God's got a plan for you.
Yeah.
She always told me that. And I can remember being in the lowest of the low and in some of the worst places around some people that were in the same boat I was in.
Yeah.
So they were lost too. I had gotten to where other dudes in my recovery program were saying, what did your mother pray about? Some of them are still friends with my mom today and show up at her house today. So the importance of her prayers, man, so much so. If you're praying for somebody and you're praying with somebody, don't pray at them. Teach them why you pray with them.
Yeah.
And remind them that there is something greater for them, and continue to do it no matter what their response is. The flesh responds sometimes in its way. It rejects common sense, common decency. It also will reject the blessing.
Yeah.
But long term, 10, 15 years down the road, you see some of the most knuckleheaded folks that had somebody in their corner that was connected some way to their church, to a ministry or something, that just kind of walked behind them, planting seeds, go in front of them, plant seeds. If it was not for my relationship with her and her never giving up on me, I can tell you that I can say this firmly, that I don't know how my relationship would have been with God, because at the time I was very transactional with everything I had. It's like, hey God, I'm gonna pray for this. You give me this, we good. But if you don't give me this, I ain't gonna talk to you for a little while, because you didn't give me what I asked for. She taught me more of a systematic approach to theology, about walking with the kingdom here. And how that would help me make better choices, because my reference point would be the word. My reference point was scripture. Seek ye first his kingdom. That was something that I didn't do before. I seek ye first my flesh.
Your kingdom.
My kingdom. And my kingdom led me to a jail door closing. And then me looking around like, what in the world have I gotten myself into?
So the moms, the dads, the husbands, the wives, the children, the loved ones of someone who's maybe in the throes of addiction and you feel very scared and hopeless, continue prayer, as he said. And I'll just add to that. If someone were to try to walk in the studio today and convince me that prayer is a myth and doesn't work, they're too late. They're too late in the game, because I've seen too much. Personally, I've served in this space for almost 13 years now. I see that prayer is powerful and effective, as the man said. The prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. And if you think that, no, I'm not righteous, I've done this or that, if you are a believer, you are seen as righteous, because for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So therefore, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Continue to pray for your loved one. We've seen things happen. I got to get to this. We're at the 31-minute mark. There's such a cool story that I don't know that many people have heard. I've heard because you were speaking at a private event. But if you've seen the documentary, The Forgotten Pandemic, his face probably, I was like, oh, that's probably, and he didn't know him. That's probably where you recognize him. He has a pretty decent part in the documentary. And one of the scenes is showing B-roll that he is speaking in front of then President Trump. And I don't want to ruin the story, but the story of how that all took place is the one that's pretty interesting. I'd really like you to tell it if you can. Again, I know you told us time frame. We're at the 32-minute mark, so however much time you want to give, but that's where we're at. So start from when you just first got the call, because this is a crazy story. Man,
it is, and so it's just the powerful testament of people like you guys. People like you guys. I want you to, but so before I go into that, I want you both to know that what you do mattered to people like me, because the old timers that I ran into that understood what I was about to go through were one of the heavy reasons that I paid attention to my mom and then recognized that she loved me. And then they were, before we had programs like you guys, which I'm so thankful now that you guys openly advocate for people like me, man. You openly advocate for folks that have been through what I've been through. So that opened the door for me to even get to a space where I got a call like that to speak in front of a president. And man, so there was this addiction summit in Atlanta, and I was on one of the panels to speak about faith and recovery. So Pastor Adam, you know me, man.
We just missed a whole, we're so late, but just so everyone, here's a flyby. Tennessee, Dr. Burks manned as the director an initiative called the Faith-Based Initiative for the Tennessee Department of Mental Health Substance Abuse, which was trailblazing in our nation. We didn't have time. You have a new thing, but he's playing over it. Like, our whole nation would call him. He would fly to Washington, D.C. He would fly to all these different states to talk about the faith-based initiative that the state of Tennessee is doing. So he really trailblazed it. So you can imagine why our governor wanted to take him on. So that was just a 10,000-foot view. They asked him to speak at this conference on the faith-based. He kind of just said it so humbly, but it was a huge deal in the work that he put in and the state that the state was doing. You traveled to every county in the state multiple years. I went with you to a lot of those counties.
Yes, you did, man.
And we sat on the panels and we try to get the churches. So the work was huge, but we've talked about that a lot. This is a different podcast. He has a different role now, but I wanted to mention that. So they asked you to speak on a panel. They asked you to speak on a panel at this convention in Georgia.
Yes, it was in Atlanta, and it's the largest addiction summit in the world.
Yeah.
And so I was going to speak on this panel about the importance of faith communities wrapping around people that are in recovery. And so I was leaving a barbershop in Germantown. And
Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee, Germantown, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. The Nashville, Germantown, not the Memphis one.
That's right, there's two.
And I get a call on my phone, and it's a 202 number, Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately hit end. This is when spam was hit its high peak.
Yeah.
So I cut it off, it called back. Cut it off again, it called back. I was trying to listen to my music. So I went down the street just maybe 100 yards. I was like, I just got a new haircut. I was getting ready for this addiction summit, man. You know, I like my haircut. I was looking good to myself. The call kept coming back to back.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this must be somebody. So I pick it up. And they said, hey, don't hang up. Is this Monty? And then they called my full name out in my birthday before I could say anything. And I was like, hey, who is this? They were like, hey, and then they told me the branch of government they were. And immediately my recovery me came out, and I started counting years. Like, what did I do? How long has it been? I'm done.
Yeah.
Lord be with me right now.
Yeah.
But I went through my head for a minute. I was like, hey, how can I help you? He said, first is this, and he gave a bunch of very personal details. And I said, yes, sir. He's like, hey, we have somebody who wants to speak to you. And it was Kellyanne Conway.
Pull up a picture here.
And Kellyanne Conway got on the phone with me, and she said, hey, I know you're coming to the summit. President Trump would like you to open up for him. It's like, okay. You know that at first, I looked around. I was on the Apple, the
AirPods.
AirPods.
AirPods, yeah.
I was looking around for Ashton Kutcher to jump out of the bushes, right? Like, I punked you, man.
Yeah.
And so I looked around, like, man, no, seriously? She was like, yes, somebody sent him some video of you speaking at another conference about the faith community, and he would love for you to be on the stage with him with a few other leaders. Actually, he didn't ask me to open for him at first. He had said that he wanted me to get on the stage with a few different leaders from around the country, and it was some really cool people that were doing very similar work, but Tennessee was way out front with what we were doing. We actually had an established government office that went out and met with churches on the ground. That's where
right.
you and I really got out there and got it in. We'd have 200 people show up in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, to say, hey, we got you. Yeah. We'll support you. So that was the first call. Then the second call came right back, and then they were like, hey, somebody wants to speak to you. And I was like, who? And they were like, well, it's the president.
Monty.
He said, hey, he called me by my first name. He called me by my first name. And he was like, hey, I want you to come up on the stage. We'd like you to open up.
That's awesome.
He said, no, so I've never shared the part that it was 2 phone calls back to back.
Yeah.
And he asked me he got someone else to patch me through. As a matter of fact, it was Kellyanne Conway. She patched me back through to him.
Oh, wow.
And from then on to this day, I still answer all 202 numbers. So spam, you want to get me, call me from D.C., I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
But
they still try.
They still try. They still try it. He got on the phone and talked to me, man, for probably 2 or 3 minutes, and about how he thought it was like a really cool thing that we were willing to get in the dirt like that with our faith communities to advocate for broken people. So I flew to Atlanta the next day, and that's where history was made.
That's cool.
Because, you know, I am Pentecostal. I grew up in the Pentecostal church, so you can't give me a microphone in front of 4,000 people because you know what's fixing to happen.
Yeah.
They gave me he asked me, so I want you to open up. You got a couple of minutes. Tell us about you and what you do. So they wouldn't let us bring a pen and pad in, man. They said we can only take our iPhones or our phones. I had an iPhone. So I put some notes down. Yeah. So I was like, man, I'm talking in front of a president. I want to make sure that I stay in control of me, because I'll tell you now.
He's chasing rabbits and
I'm chasing rabbits.
Squirrels.
I still, I'll go, out somewhere.
Yeah.
My phone went black.
Oh, perfect.
I walked up to the stage, my phone goes black, and I immediately say in my head, God, speak for me.
Yeah, that's good.
And you can Google it. You can go to C-SPAN, CNN, Fox. You just put my name in, President Trump.
I have it downloaded.
And
we'll play it right here.
Man, I ended up giving a powerful testimony, and I had people standing up all in the crowd, that had never happened at a summit like that. You had people standing up from different states. Jimmy McGill from Arkansas, if you look him up, He's pioneered their faith-based initiatives. It started that day.
That's incredible.
It started that day.
That's
I had
incredible.
Mississippi Crop, who just started their faith-based initiative. It started that day.
Yeah.
I had Illinois, Kentucky, Virginia. All of them were in the crowd just standing up. And these people, I'd never met these people. They were like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Even some of the senators that
If
were
I
from different
remember,
states.
man, President Trump, he had introduced you came up, and then afterwards he had some nice, he's like,
He said, wow.
Who's going to top that or something?
Yeah,
like that.
he said, he said, wow. He turned around and looked at me and said, wow. He said, man, I'm going to reach out to you soon.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, sir. And he talked to me, and I said, man, I thank you. My son was in the military at the time. He's a Marine.
That's right. That's right.
And I said, I appreciate your support for the United States military, sir. You know, I'm very respectful. I'm standing in front of a president.
Yeah.
And he turned around and made a joke about it. He said he did it on his iPhone, this little phone. He just started.
That's right.
He started talking like he talks, you know. And man, he just started. He said he did that, and I stood there for a minute. Man, I was perspiring in a way you would. My feet, man. I was nervous.
Yeah.
And I looked out in the crowd, and I had people looking at me, doing like
Yeah.
this.
It's like you
pointing at
preached,
me.
man. It's like you turned into preacher mode.
Man, yes.
Yeah.
And
And
when
they
I
weren't
left,
ready for that.
Man,
Yeah.
I thank God for that platform. I went in the back. We walked the president out, and when I went in the back, I had a line of people waiting to meet me. I was like, I never expected. I never got into the work for anything like that. Like, people that know me, you know I ain't like that, man. I'm like, hey, I want the little guy that's out there breaking his neck. People need to see him. But the president was like, we needed you to tell the story so other people could see that there are other people like them.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, he flew me to the White House to the National Day of Prayer.
Yeah, that's right.
And I got to sit out there with like a bunch of faith leaders, pastors, people from all walks of life in the Rose Garden. Bro, I was sitting there fist bumping Mike Pence, drinking iced tea.
Yeah.
And I walked over to the Oval Office. The door was open right there. I was just standing there, man.
Just peeking in.
I was like, 20 years ago, I was in jail.
That's wild.
And I was like, I would have never believed that God would have allowed me to be in that space. It was the coolest, most surreal moment to stand there, man. And thank you for asking me and giving me the space to say that.
Yeah,
because anyone that can hear me, the people that you sow into have the opportunity to speak in front of presidents. They also have the opportunity to be a president. Those leaders that are coming out of these systems need you to love them so they can lead. There are all kinds of people with major gifts that have been broken. So thank you, Pastor Adam.
And honestly, you've given us more time than you said. You've given us more time than you had. So, man, I'm so thankful for your time. I want to finish with this, just on that. My message is to the one Monty's message, Dr. Burks' message is really is a broad message to probably more so than the ones at the churches to say, hey, I'm really wanting you to see this community for what it is. And my message is and Chitty's message is really to encourage the one coming through addiction, male or female, like Moses. I want you guys to start this stuff. I want you guys to become these ministries, these mentors, these things. Like Moses, there was a season that God had to use you. And so just know, like Moses, he was a shepherd for his father-in-law. Could you imagine if you have a father-in-law, you would understand. I love my father-in-law. I'm sorry, but he's an amazing man. But working for him would be different. And so he went through the season in the desert, in the wilderness, being a shepherd with the sheep. And I mean, same thing with you. You might go through a season at S2L. We started as interns cleaning toilets, and then scrubbing the floors and doing this. But God, and just like you had a season. Next thing you know, you're doing this. Next thing you know, you're on the stage with a president. It's not promised for everybody, but what is promised is do the work. Stop being lazy. Like, we have these gifts. God rescued us from this thing. It's our time. Like, be productive to society. And you might have to scrub a toilet at first. You might have to drive a guy in a van at first. You might have to do a job that you don't want to, but God's calling you to. Do the work, man, because from the rooms of recovery will come the revival of a nation. But we can't be lazy. We have to stand up. It's our time. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'll just say Revelations 12:11, through the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony is how we overcome the enemy, man. I remember at a time I came to S2L in 2017. I did not know God, wasn't really raised in the church, had never really desired a relationship with God. It was the people who served me there that I saw God in. It was the power of their testimony. Yeah. It was the authority that God had given them that they spoke with that I saw there was something tangibly different about these men. And as Monty was talking about, they had similar stories and testimonies to mine. Whenever I got here, I felt like the worst of the worst. But whenever I heard a brother share his testimony that I could relate to, man, that drew me in. Maybe God does love me. Maybe God is real. Maybe he is for me. Maybe I do have purpose. So don't underestimate the importance of your story and the power of your testimony, because it's exactly what somebody else needs to hear. So proclaim those things boldly.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. That's all I got. Monty, thank you, man.
Go Vols.
Go Vols, baby.
Go Vols.
Hey. So, you know what's awesome?
Yes.
Texas A&M fan.
What? Oh,
I'm
man.
from Texas, I'm everything Texas.
Hey.
You sound like you from Texas.
Hey.
I couldn't get it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm from Houston specifically.
So the College World Series was a little bit interesting on the show.
I bet it was. Oh, my gosh. There was some ups and downs, highs and lows in this ministry during that time.
Yes, it was.
But we had a promise that we wouldn't talk smack until we were back in studio. And that first episode back, I played the Rocky Top loud in the ear.
Oh, man.
It was awesome.
I wore this today for you because I know that I'm respectfully to you as a Texas A&M fan. He and I are diehard UT
and
fans.
the shirt. I like
Yep,
that.
I got my shirt and my hat. Man,
and you got a whole bunch of other stuff that you're leaving with, right?
Yes, I am. So I'm shameless plug for S2L. You guys have got some of the greatest gear.
Hey.
Everything that you've ever given me, somebody has taken it from me. So I am good with that, because usually the people that I am able to share clothes with are people that might not have had a lot of other things. So I am thankful. And if anybody can hear this, get in and buy the sweatshirts. Are the coolest thing in the world. You can even wear them in the summer in your house while the AC's on.
Yeah.
Come on.
S2L.net. Hey, let's blow Dr. Burks up and make sure he gets what do you think if the governor has an S2L hoodie and he gets a picture?
That'd be pretty sick.
If he can get it before this comes out in a couple weeks, we'll put it up in here. So thank you so much for your time, man. As always,
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you. That's Life After Addiction, and you better believe it. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Life After Addiction. Life After Addiction is a production of S2L Studio. For more Christ-centered addiction recovery resources, please visit s2l.net. That's S2L.net. For more information about S2L's licensed and accredited residential program, please visit s2lrecovery.org. That's S2L recovery.org.